Okay, welcome to part two of Resilience. So we just told the story of the man on the subway who initially was very annoyed, but then once he understood the situation, had an entirely different perspective. That's one way of describing reframing. We'll talk more about this, but this is some of the positive and negative effects of reframing or not reframing. And so when we're faced with stress, we perceive that stress, we have a mental and emotional response, and then we kind of have a choice about what we do about that mental and emotional response. If we uh, kind of are driven by the emotions and the challenges that uh, the kind of the emotional challenges that this trial may be presenting, we can have a lot of negative effects affecting our cardiovascular and immune systems, depression, burnout, tension, anxiety, so forth. If we're able to reframe and say, okay, this is a challenging situation, however, I'm going to look at it in a way that could be helpful to me. What can I learn from this? How can I be better because of this? We can have the positive effects: physical energy, mental clarity, emotional balance, so forth. So here's a great quote from an Army Special Forces trainer, and he basically says, you can have a guy with all the survival training in the world and a negative attitude, or another guy who doesn't have a clue about training but has a positive attitude. Guarantee you the one with the positive attitude is coming out of the woods alive. And so we can make this analogy: grad DPT school. You guys are in the woods, and if you're going to come out alive, you're going to need to have that positive attitude. Fortunately for you, you're getting all the training that you need, and you can add to that training a positive attitude and be incredibly successful. And then, of course, in other aspects of our lives outside of school or work, life's happening. There are relationships, family and personal, that can be positive or negative, challenging. There can be health challenges. As we said, life definitely presents many obstacles to each of us. And so the way that we are able to effectively reframe those challenges can truly make an incredible difference. I absolutely believe this in my heart. I've experienced this personally and seen countless people really on both sides of that equation, having challenging things come in their lives and kind of succumbing to those challenges and really struggling because of them. I've seen others have challenges come in their lives and be able to positively reframe those and move in a forward direction and are better because of it. Hence the Lance Armstrong quote, I owe my life to cancer. A terrible thing, a life-threatening thing happened, and Lance Armstrong and many others are better as a result. So here, this slide talks about resilient individuals perceiving a challenge and making a commitment and taking control. That's uh, that choice to respond in a certain way. And by doing that, you see the coping skills, the social connections, our relationships with coworkers, support from supervisors, and so forth, all improve. And we, as a result of this initial challenge, we have less stress and less illness. So we talked about that choice to reframe, that choice to, in this case, take responsibility. Um, we have a challenging person, a challenging event, a health situation, whatever it may be. We own that and we say, okay, I have a choice to decide how I'm going to reply. So we can try to understand situations, events, relationships in ways that bring power as opposed to ways that diminish power. And we'll also talk about social resilience and meaningful connections. People in our lives we really shouldn't be trying to live life in a vacuum. It's pretty impossible and not desirable, especially in our field. We're going to be dealing with so many coworkers and patients that we should make that choice to have those connections and relationships be helpful and meaningful. So that responsibility, once again, comes with those choices that we make after facing a challenge, holding ourselves and others accountable. And we've talked about that in your role as students to be accountable. You get feedback, there's a certain situation, and you say, okay, I own my mistake or I own my part in this. I want to be better. What can I learn from this? And you move forward and upward. as opposed to the student or the individual who doesn't want to be accountable and wants to dwell on the problem and wants to blame. That all of that goes in a very negative, less helpful direction. So the social resilience, I love our little picture here of the little puppies holding this little boy up. As we deal with adversity, the other connections that we have from other people can be so very valuable. We can let others give us input and let others help us deal with the situation. Often there are others who know us better than we know ourselves, and they can point out to us positive traits that we have and give us the confidence to make all those choices, to be responsible and to reframe. And so, and we can be that person for others, very importantly. As we help others with their situations, we benefit and we gain strength ourselves. So that social support, the number of social contacts, it doesn't mean that more followers on social media or more people in our social networks is necessarily better. Really important is the intimacy of our social contacts. We need to have people who trust us and who we can trust, who really do know us and who can give us that input. And so we all should be forming and developing new relationships as life goes on. We may have our family relationships and our longtime friends, and those are very great, but we also may be meeting somebody, a colleague, a friend, even getting to know a family member better who can be a future incredibly important social contact for us. And so that nature of the contact, it's not the number of friends or contacts, it's the nature of that relationship, and is it helpful for us? And then we have spiritual resilience, and basically it says that which is in total harmony with the perceptual and non-perceptual environment. So spiritual wellness can be each of us striving to be more in tune with ourselves, and whatever we determine to be spirituality, realizing the importance and power of that, and importantly, that relationship that others have spiritually, whether it's a friend or a contact or a patient, respecting and understanding that these spiritual wellness indicators are very, very important. So we talked about the challenges you may have had in your life. I kind of alluded to this earlier, but in this little exercise to kind of apply to this lecture today, as you think about something that you're going through right now or you have gone through in the past, those two questions can be so important. What can I learn from this? How can I be better because of this? You see how choosing to ask ourselves those questions is in many ways a reframing exercise and a choice to take responsibility of our own lives. And very often these challenges that come our way are out of our control. We didn't ask for them necessarily, but here they are. And so then how do we respond to those? And I think these two questions can really be a source of a lot of personal growth and kind of using these challenges to thrive. If you remember the Carver's research from the first part of this lecture, to thrive because of challenges and not succumb to them. So just more talking about this personal resilience. In our mind, the choices we make, we can either create barriers to growth and a better future or bridges to growth and a better future. And so just very important that we avoid feeling helpless and hopeless. If we're feeling that way, then trying to find a way out of that thought process, trying to reframe, trying to find others who may be able to help us do that and moving forward in a positive way. And so problem-focused versus emotion-focused coping, we had a slide about this earlier, and it's basically we have emotional responses to things that happen in our lives. That's very natural, and we need to experience that and then make the choice after that to, or because of that, to focus on the problem and focus on a solution and a step up instead of kind of just responding to the challenge that may be happening in our lives. So interesting to think about self-esteem. Each of us has a given level of self-esteem today, and we think about what the factors are that cause that. Maybe it's our upbringing, maybe it's our parents, our siblings, our other family members or close friends. Can we improve that self-esteem? And I would argue that absolutely, yes, we can. So much of what has been discussed in these two lectures talk about exactly that process. At a given point in time, we have a certain level of self-esteem. We can choose to improve that based on the way we reframe our lives, the relationships we choose to have, the relationships perhaps we choose to discontinue. All of those can really be choices that are helpful for us. And this can relate to burnout in our career of physical therapy, healthcare provision, a lot of stress, a lot of problems and challenges that we're helping our patients work through. And we need to learn how to avoid that burnout by finding the reasons why we love to be a physical therapist and what are our rewards. We'll talk a little bit more about both these things. So I kind of touched on all this self-esteem. Where did it come from? And I truly believe we can increase that. Burnout in physical therapists very often is related to, here's a study that looked at this. We often have student debt, and so our salary to debt ratio. Sometimes we can choose a job that has a difficult environment where there's productivity standards that are very difficult to obtain, and that's a source of stress. Technology, poor company cultures. When all of you students go out on your full-time clinical rotations, you will have, you've all been in PT clinics before PT school, and some of you during PT school, but now where you are in your education really puts you in a unique position to assess and look at the environments where you're completing your rotations. And so these can be kind of prolonged, very meaningful job interviews where you can look behind the curtain and see if a given clinic or department is a happy, positive, productive place that you want to be part of. We want to avoid that emotional exhaustion. We want to understand that the challenges our patients are going through are their challenges. We don't need to take those home with us every night. We need to maintain that closeness with our patients, but not let it consume us. So you'll see this when you're on your rotations. You'll see your clinical instructors and other PTs, some who are thriving and better every day because of their job, and others who you may worry are winding down because of their job. So emotional intelligence plays a huge role in all of this. Awareness and management of one's emotions and the emotions of others. Our profession deals with a lot of emotions, and so our own self-awareness is hugely important to understand how we are managing stress, how we are dealing with others, dealing with change, receiving feedback. Doing what we can to improve those capabilities will definitely avoid burnout and help us be happier in our jobs. And that's kind of where this clinical empathy comes in. We want to be concerned for our patients, and that needs to be genuine and sincere, but we also have to maintain a certain level of detachment. And, empathy versus sympathy, understanding what a patient's going through, empathizing with them, being there for them, but not taking all of that on our shoulders. That would be kind of maybe an unhealthy sympathy. And so going forward, we need to be kind to ourselves. We're often focused on being compassionate with others. We need to extend that to ourselves and be forgiving of ourselves, be encouraging to ourselves. You often hear me talk about those voices in our heads. Let's choose to have the positive, helpful voice in our heads and tell the negative voice in our heads to jump in a lake and not bother us. I'm doing some research right now on growth mindset, basically the belief that one's abilities can be improved, being optimistic. And so there's a reference there for you to look at. And in essence, in my last 10 seconds, resilience and grit can be developed and enhanced, and they're very important for each of us. And so I hope that you'll give that some thought going forward.